Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 247. Demon King Selection. Part 1. It had been a week since I went to the Gourmet Association. During this week, I was very busy. There were only 4 days left until the Demon King Selection. Until then, I had to complete all of my preparations. Apart from the Black Demon sword in Yu Jonghyuk's hands, there were some usable hidden pieces in Murim. I opened the first revision of Ways of Survival in order to find the sub-scenarios that would let me get the hidden pieces. During this time, I read the revised text and reviewed the important parts, but there were still many missing pieces. You're busy as soon as you come here. I'd barely seen your face. Jang Haeung, who was wearing large sleeveless clothes that didn't fit him, followed after me for 30 minutes. I stared at him with a frown and asked, "Shouldn't you be training?" Jang Haeung stretched out his lips and replied, "Haven't I been working hard?" "What is hard?" "You were eating dumplings." "Can't I do closed-door training while eating dumplings?" I wondered why he was bothering me when something came to mind. "Oh, I heard you finished third in the competition?" "It is a big deal." Jang Haeung shrugged and pretended to look elsewhere. It wasn't a big deal. However, the curve of his mouth showed that he felt pretty great. I knew why he was chasing after me like this, dishonest guy. "Did you get it? The demon spirit bead?" "Yes." "Give it to me." "Why?" Jang Haeung stepped back with a suspicious look. I sighed and told him, "I'm not going to take it away. You can't eat it like this anyway." Based on his dark expression, he had already heard about it from Yu Jonghyuk. I'm sure he told the story while picking out the Black Demon sword. If you eat it, you will experience a chi deviation and all the blood vessels in your body will explode, killing you. There is only one person here who can safely absorb the demon spirit bead. I thought this, and understood why Jang Haeung was acting like this. You don't have to give it to me if you don't want to. You are the one who earned it yourself. It couldn't be helped if Jang Haeung didn't believe me since not enough trust had been built up yet. At this moment, Jang Haeung extended a small hand. "It isn't like that. In the first place, I wouldn't have gained this if it wasn't for you." A small pill fell into my hand with a thud. This was one of the 3 major drugs of first Murim, the demon spirit bead. I spoke with a smile, "Wait and see." It was a drug that a terrible person from the blood demon school made in the past, by refining the blood of 1,000 people. It was a cursed pill that could gain the best power out of the conception vessel, but turned the person who took it crazy due to the curse of the souls. TL, meridians are a network of vessels/channels in the body where chi flowed. There are 8 extraordinary meridians, and one of them is the conception vessel. In the original novel, Yu Jonghyuk always found it delicious, but Jang Haeung would surely die if he took it. Let's see. However, as with any scenario, it wasn't impossible to use a cursed item. In fact, I clearly remembered a scene from Ways of Survival where the flying fox absorbed this tribulation. All I need is 3 great return pills. After all, everything is about balance and harmony. If demonic energy is a problem, we can supply it regularly. The curse could be avoided if 3 great return pills were ground together with the demon spirit bead. It was easier said than done. The problem was how to get the demon spirit bead, one of the top 3 drugs, along with 3 great return pills. However, this wasn't a big problem for me. Bayu. I called Bayu and opened the Dakibi bag. The great return pill was already on the recommended goods list. The Dakibi's big data was scary. Plus. Recommended products list. Asterisk great return pill, 200,000 C stock, 5. Plus. 200,000 coins. I normally would have been distressed by the price, but not anymore. I deliberately switched the screen to public and purchased the goods. 600,000 coins have been consumed. You have purchased 3 great return pills. Then channel messages kept appearing. Some constellations envy your overspending. A few constellations are curious about the performance of the great return pill. Some constellations say they will sponsor 500 coins if you tell them the performance of the Great Return pill. 6 to 600,000 coins? The passing Han Myungo shook while holding a bowl of dog food. He was probably preparing a meal for the Breaking the Sky Master. That. I heard you were rich. Things turned out well. Please take this and grind it together. What is this? Is it a panacea? Don't be curious. If you eat it wrong, you will be cursed by a demon king. Han Myungo paled after hearing about the demon king's curse and acted quickly after taking the pills from me. The 4 pills were turned into a fine powder. I held out the bowl towards Jang Haeung, who told me, "I can't eat powder." Endure it this time. Block your nose and swallow it with water. By the way, can I really eat this? It won't be much help to you Jonghyuk or I if we eat it. You're different. You Jonghyuk already had enough of a magic power system in place even if you didn't eat the demon spirit bead. Meanwhile, I had the broken heart of a young gold dragon. However, Jang Haeung was suffering from a lack of magic power. Jang Haeung kept hesitating, so I told him, "If you don't want to eat it, give it to me. Anyhow, you have no courage." "I'll eat it." Jang Haeung poured the powdered medicine into his mouth and swallowed the bitter taste with water. The moment Jang Haeung put down the bowl, the Breaking the Sky Master, who had been waiting for the opportunity, rushed over and eagerly licked the bowl. Jang Haeung looked at his condition and cocked his head with a slight smile. "I don't feel anything special? The efficacy should appear by tomorrow. It will take time for the pills to mix with the body's energy." Jang Haeung nodded like he understood. Then Han Myungo stepped in again from where he was listening. "Look, Dr. SSI." I glanced back and something I expected had showed up. "This car, it is from the Gourmet Association?" The car he mentioned was the X-grade Ferrorigine left in one corner of the yard. I stared at the sleek black body that could even cross the fault lines of the dark dimension, and the words of the mass production maker suddenly came to mind. "Don't make too many enemies." He was definitely a different type from the constellations I knew. I would have had a better memory of him if he had given me this car for free. "Is the Gourmet Association a charitable organization?" "I bought it with a lease." "Lease? How much?" "It is 50,000 coins a month." 5 to 50,000 coins? How many coins did you earn?" "Roughly 4.8 million coins." Jang Haeung and Han Myungo's mouths dropped open as they heard 4.8 million coins. Jang Haeung asked, "Excuse me, do you have an incarnation?" "Why? Do you want to be my incarnation?" I smiled at him and Jang Haeung shouted, "I was just wondering. In addition, I've already decided on a constellation." "Constellation? Who?" I asked with slight nervousness. I didn't want Jang Haeung as an incarnation, but things would become complicated if Jang Haeung picked the wrong constellation. Then Jang Haeung unexpectedly replied, "The Demon King of Salvation." "What?" "I want to be his incarnation." I wanted to make a joke when I saw Jang Haeung's intense eyes. Then I thought about it and realized that he still hadn't heard my modifier. In the original, he was a person with great senses. No, there was no reason for him to think I was the Demon King of Salvation in the first place. I suddenly wanted to tease this person. "Will he accept you? Have you contacted him?" "Not yet." I saw Jang Haeung's blushing face and realized he really didn't know who I was. It was a complicated feeling. Then the watching Han Myungo interrupted. "You still don't know his modifier?" "I don't know it." "Should I know?" Before I could stop him, Han Myungo pointed at me. "That friend is the Demon King of Salvation." For the next 2 days, Jang Haeung avoided me. The usually lazy person suddenly never emerged from his training. Thus, I was stressed, because I was left alone with Yu Jonghyuk in the training field. "You must have done something useless again, Kim Dokja." "It's nothing." Yu Jonghyuk scratched the ground with the black demon sword and left. It was an action that appeared when he was in a good mood. This jerk, he seemed excited about his new sword. In the training field, the sound of Jang Haeung punching a pile was heard repeatedly. It sounded similar to when I kicked my futon every night. You didn't seem like a constellation, but you have their habit of peeking. I turned around and saw a super tall woman. I was about to open my mouth when the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint spoke. If you don't add Nim, I will hit your arse. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint Nim. I couldn't be like you Jonghyuk just because of a single syllable. Have you gone to Tartarus? Not yet. However, I got an appointment with the Queen of the Underworld thanks to you. I'm glad. Perhaps it was due to the anticipation that she would meet her kin, but a mild shadow passed over the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's face. The harvest of this journey was that I obtained her. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was one of the strongest transcendents in ways of survival. Her presence alone we might be able to somehow get through the Demon King selection. I opened my mouth. I have a question. Can I ask it? I'll allow it. Why did you teach Jang Haeung your martial arts? That person has talent. It is possible to achieve a new type of transcendence if I polish him well. I knew what she meant. Perhaps the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint felt the wall that was inside Jang Haeung. However, that shouldn't be the reason. You know that he is a man. Originally, the Breaking the Sky swordsmanship was only for women. Yu Jonghyuk might be the exception, but this school had never accepted many disciples. You're still young. There isn't only one interpretation of a story. The words were cryptic. Maybe the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint noticed that Jang Haeung was a woman in his previous life. Then the story of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint began. I remember a man I knew before. A man? Yes, a man. At this moment, I fully understood the meaning of there isn't only one interpretation of a story spoken by the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. The word she chose was confusing because it could be a man or her man, i.e. a lover. No, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint shouldn't have a lover. He was very handsome. In the original novel, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint never mentioned a man, so I felt something strange. You aren't trying to say that. Jang Haeung is like your former lover, right? I was joking, but unexpectedly, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint answered seriously. His handsome looks are a resemblance. At this point, I wondered if she accepted Yu Jonghyuk just because he was handsome. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint didn't care about my disappointment and continued. He was very handsome, but a poor person because of his small size. Small? I was thinking about her ex-boyfriend when something flashed through my mind, causing me to feel astonishment. A person who had a connection with the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint in ways of survival. In addition, small was the most appropriate word for him. No, wait a minute. I thought their relationship wasn't good. At this moment, a loud sound was heard from outside. An unimaginable aura dominated the area of the Blue Dragon Castle, including this estate. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and I ran outside at the same time, and Yu Jonghyuk looked my way. Kim Dokja. In the sky, a vortex was appearing. It was a vortex I knew very well. It was a cursed outlet that only opened when a disaster appeared in the scenario. Yu Jonghyuk spoke in a low tone, the Great Hall. The disaster scenarios were originally only seen in the early scenario areas. There was no disaster in the first Murim. There were no disasters in scenario areas that had passed the 20th scenario. In such an area, there was only one really why the hall would open. Run away. The great disaster scenario of the first Murim was going to begin. Chapter 248. Demon King Selection. Part 2. There were two types of disaster scenarios in the star stream. The first was the apocalypse scenarios named after the relevant nebulae and had become a type of myth, such as Ragnarok and Gigantomachia. The second was a destruction scenario that occurred irregularly. This was the case with the Great Hall before my eyes. It isn't a constellation. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint stared up at the raging sky that had become dark. If it didn't have the aura of a constellation, there was only one answer. An outer god. Now I had become a constellation. I could feel the power of the outer god casting shadows from the hall. It was one I had encountered a few times. However, the feeling I felt now was different in dimension. The blind wasn't too blinded when looking at the sun. For the first time, I hated that I had become a constellation. Yu Jonghyuk muttered, "Why is the destruction scenario beginning now?" Yu Jonghyuk had gone through the first and second rounds and knew the future of the first Murim. In the original novel, the first Murim was destroyed by an outer god. However, it was still too early. In the original novel, it happened in a few years. Now something pulled that timeline forward. What was it? What the hell went wrong? Wait, perhaps? Yu Jonghyuk had similar thoughts and asked me, "Is my idea correct?" "It seems to be the case," I replied nervously. The destruction scenario was a scenario that tested the possibilities of the incarnations. If the accumulated probability value was never filled up, the disaster would never begin. In this Blue Dragon Castle, there was only one thing that recently triggered probability. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint opened her mouth. It was the martial arts competition. The martial arts competition. The probability that the brash swamp predator and other constellations used eventually triggered the disaster. A few constellations who dislike you are enjoying the situation. Damn bastards. Kim Dokja. What the hell did you do there? Yu Jonghyuk didn't know exactly what happened at the Gourmet Association and was angry at me. I had no excuses. There was no way to reverse a scenario that had already begun. In a few moments, the destruction scenario will begin. The outer god is preparing to attack. All non-participants in the scenario should quickly leave the scenario area. The messages were heard from the sky and a disturbance began in the Blue Dragon Castle. Crazy! What is this? Hurry and flee! Unlike other scenarios, the Great Destruction scenario had the option of participating. Incarnations like us were quickly leaving the area. Even the merchants selling the files containing the martial arts and the martial artists of Blue Dragon Castle. Their expressions changed the moment the Great Hall appeared in the sky. The concept of skilled and unskilled was meaningless in front of this existence. What happened? Jang Haeung and Han Myung-go belatedly ran out into the yard. "We have to get out of here. Prepare quickly." Heek, Jang Haeung gulped as he pointed to the sky. Many tentacles were extending from the Great Hall. It was undoubtedly the outer god I encountered on Peaceland and in Dark Castle. I'll explore this story of leaving things. I was overwhelmed by the terrible presence that permeated the syllables. The colossal greed caused the escaping people to collapse and piss themselves. Yuyuwa. It was huge chaos that disrupted the spirit just from the true voice. Of course, it was unreasonable to confront such a person, no matter how strong Yu Jonghyuk was. Even a weak outer god had the power to trample on constellations. It was hard to expect a chance using the fourth wall like I did with the Eater of Dreams. There are 30 minutes until the start of the destruction scenario. We had to run away from here. Maybe that was the better choice. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I gazed at the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and she was looking back at me. It was an unfathomable expression. To the Breaking the Sky Sword Namgung Minyoung, the first Murim was home. All I knew were the sentences written in Ways of Survival. According to those sentences, there was no reason for the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint to defend this place. Of course, not everyone likes their home. To her, the first Murim was just the breeding ground of a corrupt world. It was a world that lost recognition and compassion. Murim was already destroyed long before the first Murim was destroyed. So far, there was no reason for the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint to stay here. The first Murim would perish. To be exact, it had to perish. Teacher. Yu Jonghyuk's voice pushed for us to leave. Then why didn't the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint move? She stood like a mountain as she silently stared at the street across from her. The city was chaotic from rioting and desertion. Then I saw a group of people approaching. They were those who were looking at transcendence or had seen transcendence. I sensed the youthful aura around their bodies and noticed who they were. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, it's been a while. The heads of the powerful clans of Blue Dragon Castle had come to visit the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. It wasn't hard to guess why they came here. The outer god had come to Murim and the destruction was scheduled. There were two types of reactions before Murim was destroyed: run away or fight. Those who didn't have much to lose would flee, but the incarnations who had been here for a long time were different. They built up forces, gathered wealth, and created stories. They were those who reached the peak in power of one area. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. We need your help. From left to right, they were the Zhuge family, Murim family, the Sichuan Tangmen school, the Wangbo family, and the Namgung family. The heads of the 5 main forces of the first Murim had gathered, which was probably a rare event throughout all of Murim. Behind them were the chiefs of the big schools. I beg you, lend Murim your strength. Namgung Minyoung clenched her fists and replied, "You need my strength." Some of the heads of the distinguished families recoiled at the cold voice. The quickest one to react was the head of the Zhuge family. "Please help us. I'm asking you." I understood why they came out like this. The Iceflower Goddess, who was the best martial artist of this area, was defeated by the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's disciple. There was also an overwhelming gap in skill. Perhaps the impact of the martial arts competition alarmed the countless masters who had been running along the easy path. Yu Zhonghyuk showed the power to defeat even a descended constellation. The old masters felt nostalgic at the old path of transcendence, while the adventurers who came to visit were reminded of those who had reached the peak. Master's ancestor, please help your descendants. In the end, the one who spoke was a member of the Namgung family, which was the same family as the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint Namgung Minyoung. It was a middle-aged man with a fierce face. Perhaps this was Namgung Jinshin, one of the 10 Grand Elders. It might be only half, but the blood of his family also flowed through the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. For that reason, the eyes of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint were shaken. I wasn't able to watch anymore and went forward. How funny. Weren't you the ones who previously abandoned the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint? Normally, I would have acted on their shared feelings. I would have devised a way to take them together with me to the Demon King selection. However, now the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was more urgent. Sadly, you forget everything you did when the constellations and Akibis first visited here. What? Who are you? Some of the family chiefs changed their expressions after realizing the true meaning of my words. Maybe they also remembered. Why did the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, who ruled at the top of Murim, open a martial arts hall in a fallen area? Yu Zhonghyuk knew the circumstances and bit his lips at my words. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint Namgung Minyoung's expression distorted and her heroic spirit stopped. I couldn't blame her for being swept away. She didn't pursue honor or vain lust. Thus, she was used by the Murim people and eventually abandoned here. As the symbol of the fallen Murim, the distinguished families left her in this place and built their own castles. The Namgung family's master, it is the same for you. Master's ancestor, you have never called the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint that before, right? That. If you had any thoughts, you wouldn't have come here. I don't know if you're brave or stupid. Don't you know why the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint split apart from your Namgung family? A child born between a giant god and a human. I knew better than anyone the trials that the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint experienced as she grew up, perhaps even more than Yu Zhonghyuk. How is a female? It is the cursed blood of the giant gods. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint made a questionable face. She must be wondering why I knew these things. Usually, it would be a dangerous remark, but now her question was beneficial for me. The Breaking the Sky Sword would follow me in order to resolve this question. What do you know? Shut up. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, who is this person? The agitated family heads approached to threaten me, and Yu Zhonghyuk raised the black demon sword. It was a good thing. If there was a conflict here, we could get out of here peacefully. Before the furious Yu Zhonghyuk could deal a blow, the Zhuge family's head suddenly fell to the ground. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, I am reflecting on the mistakes of those days. I understand that we can't undo our actions. Damn, there were still smart guys in this world. The other family heads were baffled by the Zhuge head's actions. The head of the Zhuge family was begging to the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint with a desperate countenance. It was as if he was praying to the god of Murim. If you don't help, the first Murim will be destroyed. He could ask for a god's compassion at any time, but he was a disciple ready to abandon his faith at any time. Then the god of Murim responded. At one time, small trees came together to form a forest. The head of the Zhuge family looked up at the Breaking the Sky Sword after hearing the unexpected words. Now that the small trees are uprooted and only a few large trees that have occupied the land have covered the sky with their branches. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint looked at the blue dragon castle with a blank expression. The spires of the distinguished family's homes rose higher than the walls. It was as if they were looking down on the residents on behalf of the heavens. Then I understood the words of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. The leaves and branches are plentiful, but now there are only a few trees left. What do you think? Can this still be called a forest? Murim had died a long time ago. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint had declared it just now. Let's go. The god of Murim turned her back and betrayed this world. It seemed easier to resolve than I expected. I was satisfied and followed after the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Yu Zhonghyuk was watching me while Zhang Heiyang and Han Myungo packed quickly as they ate dumplings. At this moment, a strange message was heard. Your actions have had a profound impact on the direction of. What? The second revision update will begin. Chapter 249. Demon King Selection. Part 3. The second revision update. The message appeared at an unexpected time and made me think for a moment. Another revision meant the future would keep changing due to my actions. In other words, after receiving the first revision, I contributed to the creation of a new future. My heart throbbed at the thought. Did I succeed in the third round? Would it once again start from the fourth round? Did Yu Zhonghyuk reach the end in the story I changed? The author, why did he keep sending me these things? The second revision update is in progress. I couldn't be sure of anything, since the file hadn't updated yet. Things might have gotten better or worse. The thing I had to think about right now wasn't the direction of the new revision, but the immediate development. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Are you going to flee now? You are going to abandon the world you have been living in. As I was briefly distracted by ways of survival, the masters rose in unison. The most serious change occurred in the Zhuge head, who had been the first to kneel. Run away? You are saying this to me? What are you doing right now if it isn't running away? How funny, child. There was a deep mockery in the voice. The Murim people responded to the voice and raised their aura. Every one of them were first-class masters in First Murim. The magic power of the family heads combined and a threatening earthquake spread through the area. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint stepped towards the family heads who were raising their pressure. Kuhik! It was an incredible sight. The shock waves that spread from around the advancing Breaking the Sky Sword Saint precisely offset the seismic waves emitted from the other side, causing internal injuries to all the masters with a magic power that was several times the opponent. Everything was done with a simple footstep. This was the power of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, who was called a disaster. The fallen masters coughed up blood and stared resentfully at the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Be Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Don't throw us away. Please. They believed that this type of power would surely prevent the destruction. In the pale countenances, there was the shadow of hope rather than despair. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint stared down at them blankly while the great hall in the sky became bigger and bigger. Now I couldn't delay any longer. Bayu. Bayu appeared out of thin air and started to open a portal. The problem was the location of the portal. No matter how much I looked, there were no portals around us. The first one to speak was Jang Haeung, who confirmed the location of the portal using 100 lanes that he learned through the unidentified wall. I think the portal opened that way. Do we have to run to the square? Jang Haeung was pointing to the square that we first arrived at when we came to the Blue Dragon Castle. I urged Bayu. Bayu, can't you move the portal to this place? Bong. Bayu shook her head with a grim expression. Independent Dakibis might be constrained in strength. Or perhaps it was because Bayu was still a young Dakibi. In the end, we have to move back to where we first passed through the portal. The Breaking the Sky Master barked. I turned back and saw the Breaking the Sky Master was pushing his head out from the passenger seat of the X-grade Ferrigini. Get on, quickly. Han Myungo called out to us from the driver's seat. We quickly boarded the vehicle. Depart. The magic power engine of the X-grade Ferrigini roared. The masters chased after us using their techniques, but no matter how high their level, they couldn't catch up to the work made by the mass production maker. There are 10 minutes remaining until the start of the destruction scenario. I could see the landscape of the first Murim outside my window. The sky was red. Things like meteorite debris were falling from the Great Hall. A market exploded from the shockwave and flames spread. The giant spires built by the distinguished families were paying the price for challenging the sky. Aaak! Buildings collapsed and the ground shook. Some people were covered by the collapsed buildings. There were people crying over dying people and others shouting that they should flee. I could see little children who abandoned everything and sat down on the spot. I was watching the fall of a world like I was turning pages. One day, Asmodeus had stated, "The scenario is a small destruction to prevent a greater destruction." How many more had to suffer destruction in order to end this story? I turned my head and saw that the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and Yu Jonghyuk were watching the same scene as me. Flee quickly. But the voices of several young people came from the window. The men and women injured by the debris were looking around for help. Han Myungo stepped on the brakes and Jang Haeung opened his mouth. Can't we give them a ride? I thought he would say this. I shook my head. No. Han Myungo stepped on the accelerator and we started moving again. Jang Haeung spoke in a voice filled with faint resentment. There's plenty of room in here. We are separate from this scenario so we can leave. Those people are different. However, this master was born here and can leave with us. She is a bit special. I glanced at the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was in existence with the blood of a giant god. She wasn't born in the Murim scenario and could receive other scenarios if she left this place. Outside the window, I could see male and female martial artists. The people here will die anyway. Those who were born here and only received scenarios here couldn't escape from the first Murim. Even if they managed to leave here, they would instantly die due to the exile penalty. There was helplessness in Jang Haeung's expression. Then, I knew Jang Haeung's feelings. I have lived with these emotions for a long time. In front of any crisis in the world, the only thing we can do was turn over the pages of the world. There are 8 minutes until the start of the destruction scenario. Your story of destruction is descending. The darkened sky was flashing. In the meantime, the number of tentacles that emerged through the Great Hall had exceeded 4. Jang Haeung shook as he gazed at the growing hall and Yu Jonghyuk was immersed. The hairs on my skin were standing up. Kim Dokja thought, I can't compete with that. Who did I have to fight against? What strength did I need to obtain in the future? I once again realized it. Maybe this was one of the giant stories. It was a story that I couldn't afford yet. This story, which descended to end a world, was completely different from every story I had ever used. There is no PL Ace to run, PA or SLA VES of the SC na Rio. The windows of the Blue Dragon Castle were destroyed by the resounding true voice. Des truck Tien will FO low you. Even the body of the mass production maker's car couldn't overcome the shock of the true voice and shook. There are 5 minutes until the start of the destruction scenario. The portal. Fortunately, we arrived at the portal in time. Now we just had to escape. Let's go. I got the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint and made my debut in the Gourmet Association. I also built up many coins. The finish was tough, but I had no solution at this time. The first Murim was a world that would someday be destroyed, and now I had no way of stopping that destruction. At this moment, the Breaking the Sky Sword got out of the car. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint? Her expression was still unreadable. Still, I knew her thoughts without needing to read her expression. All residents of Murim should gather immediately in the square. Her divinity echoed through this world like a lion's roar. It was extremely powerful and was reminiscent of a constellation's true voice. The fleeing martial artists instantly looked this way after hearing her voice. Be Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. For a moment, the Murim people had mixed feelings of joy. I got off the car and shouted, "Wait a minute!" I was confused. Why did the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint make this choice? Was it because of something I did? Several thoughts passed through my head. Perhaps the second revision being updated was because the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint died in this place? The second revision update is in progress. I gritted my teeth. The second revision still hadn't arrived. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. We must go together. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint would die if she remained here. Then the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint replied, "Young constellation, one tree doesn't make up a forest." Amidst the sinister feeling, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint directed her words to me. Then how many trees need to gather to become a forest? Of course, I never thought about such a thing. Instead, all I saw were the tiny trees being broken by the falling meteorites. The very small trees had been covered by such big trees that it was unknown they even existed. The trees were shouting towards the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Save me. Please save me. I had forgotten. What type of person was the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint? Her heroic spirit is so high that she sometimes makes other people's definition of justice shabby. Every transcendent had something they couldn't concede, and this was it for the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. However, understanding her justice didn't mean I condoned her actions. Just as a few trees couldn't be called a forest, one tree couldn't block a landslide. Have you forgotten your promise? Didn't you say you would help me if I let you meet your people? I remember, and I'll keep it. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint replied as she stared up at the sky. Since the complete Great Destruction hadn't begun yet, the oldest ones wouldn't appear. Still, it was certain that beyond this sky was an ancient god. At the very least, it was similar to the Eater of Dreams, caught by me and Yu Jong-hyuk. I will go to you after stopping them here. Could the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint beat an existence that didn't fall to Cheok Junyang's three sword style? Teacher. Then Yu Jong-hyuk came forward. However, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was stubborn. Leave. The lesson for this time is over. I need you. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint's eyes were faintly shaken at the honest words. It is very fascinating. If only it wasn't for this type of situation. I can't break the 46th scenario alone. You must. From these words, I realized what the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint meant to Yu Jong-hyuk. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint faintly smiled at Yu Jong-hyuk. It was as if her disciple was special. The giant hands of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint covered Yu Jong-hyuk's head like a lid. You're not alone. The eyes of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint stayed on me for a very short time. She continued speaking. I will stop the destruction of this place. Just as Yu Jong-hyuk knew the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint knew Yu Jong-hyuk. Thus, she knew the words to send Yu Jong-hyuk away. I will stop the destruction of this world. Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Stop it and go. Yu Jong-hyuk didn't move. The many emotions pouring out of his heart were conveyed to me. There is 1 minute until the start of the destruction scenario. In the end, I pulled at Yu Jong-hyuk. I didn't want to leave this way, but if I didn't make this choice, the third round would end here. We must go, Yu Jonghyuk. The person who stiffened like a stone statue didn't move, and Jang Haeung and Han Myunggo eventually came out. Yu Jonghyuk was dragged into the car, and the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint stared at me. Please look after my disciple. The Breaking the Sky Master barked from the car. Yu Jonghyuk was staring this way with a completely distraught expression. You too, leave. The person who always looked down on people was now looking up at a place higher than herself. Then the sky gazed down at her. In te res ting kray tian, hu ri you. The foreign god was asking for the name of a god. In a situation where the constellations would be stunned, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint opened her mouth without retreating. I am the god of Murim. As if she heard her disciple leaving, the lonely tree that guarded the forest for a long time spoke towards the sky. I am the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Chapter 250. Demon King Selection. Part 4. The ground and the sky rattled like cogs. Something gigantic was descending from the sky, and there was a person blocking it. The magic power and giant story caused a burst of brilliant sparks as they collided. There are 40 seconds until the start of the destruction scenario. The opponent was an outer god. Little by little, the ceiling of the sky was coming closer. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint didn't back down, despite the pressure weighing down on the entire castle. No, she couldn't back down. She never backed down from her beliefs. This was the banner of a transcendent who only walked a single story. Fight it. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint revived the despairing Murim people. Many constellations are interested in the development of this scenario. Some constellation are paying attention to the transcendent Namgung Minyoung. The stars were gathering in the night sky. Like piranhas smelling blood, the constellations illuminated the sky with a red light. The Dakibis also appeared like they had been waiting. Constellations, it is time for the destruction to come. Some of the constellations were watching the world's demise with a somber expression, while others were watching with excitement. Every person's feelings were different, but the downfall of one world was nothing more than entertainment for them. Just like me. At this moment, many emotions muddled my head. Maybe these emotions had been piled up since the Gourmet Association. If I threw away Murim here, would I be any different from them? Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. I pulled up my status, and a change occurred in the constellations. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is looking forward to your choice. Many constellations are paying attention to your presence. The attention moved from the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint to me. Yo you. If I caught the eye of the outer god, I wouldn't be able to escape this place. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint knew this, and stopped me. This isn't your battlefield. It was as if this page wasn't allowed for me. Leave this world to the people here. I didn't know what Murim was for the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. It was a place that worshipped her a god while also bringing her down. Nevertheless, at this moment, the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint decided to defend Murim. The stories of the 29th scenario area, the first Murim is piling up. Then Murim responded to the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. The 29th scenario area has found its guardian. The first Murim is looking at Breaking the Sky Sword Saint Namgung Minyoung. The possibility of a giant story is germinating. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint blinked with surprise. Perhaps it was the first time she had heard this message. If someone wanted to destroy the world would respond to the destruction. In this world, everything that has built up history has a will. It was a land that was made of the blood, flesh, sweat, and effort of the Murim people. The stories carved onto the land were flocking to the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint. Grandeur could be felt from the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint as Murim nestled in her body. The possibility of a giant story. It hadn't blossomed yet, and I didn't know when it would be germinated. Still, it is the possibility of a giant story. Ka 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 ka. A bizarre sound that resembled laughter poured from the sky. Finally, 5 tentacles descended from the sky. No matter how great the possibility of a giant story, it was impossible to stop the outer god with just the breaking the sky sword saint. The outer gods were beings who had lived a long time and faced such giant stories. She knew no more time could be wasted, and the breaking the sky sword saint shouted, "Go now." Then my body was pushed into the car. The portal is activated. Yu Jonghyuk belatedly regained his mind and tried to get out of the car, but the X-grade Farorigine had already started. It only took one moment. As we passed through the portal, the breaking the sky master was silent. The scenery of Murim slowly moved away, and everything was covered in darkness. The survivors never said anything for a long time. You have arrived in the 73rd Demon Realm. There are 3 days remaining until the Demon King selection. Maybe it was because too many things happened in a row. The party had no words after returning. The car turned off and only a stillness remained. "I'll smoke a cigarette for a while." Han Myungo left, while Jang Haeung placed his head against his knees. The breaking the sky master whined while Yu Jonghyuk, "Damn." I breathed calmly while thinking about what I gained from this journey. Everything I had done was for the upcoming Demon King selection. I went to Murim to recruit the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint as a colleague and went to the Gourmet Association in the process. I couldn't bring the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint back with me. I couldn't persuade the constellations of the Gourmet Association. The only income was that Yu Jonghyuk and Jang Haeung became stronger. There was a transcendent dog and coins possessed, 4,890,875 C. The second revision update has been completed. Despite the message, I didn't dare to look at my smartphone. Nevertheless, I had to look, even if I felt disgusted by the contents I would see. Kim Dokja. I looked up and saw Yu Jonghyuk staring at me. I couldn't bear to read the anger in his heart. I had nothing to say even if Yu Jonghyuk tried to kill me here. What do we do now? It was a voice that contained no special feelings. I felt a subtle fear and triggered Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Then I immediately regretted it. My chest was stuffy from the suffocating emotions. They were emotions that couldn't be described in words. The sorrow was too deep that it couldn't become language. Yu Jonghyuk was already a madman. Maybe he had been like this for a long time. This event would wear him down even more. The emotions that didn't burst would move on to the next turn, and it would lead to his death. It would wear at him and isolate him. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint of the third round would be forgotten. I opened my trembling lips. I needed to say something. The Breaking the Sky Sword Saint was surely alive. She would come back alive. However, I couldn't say it. I wasn't TLS 123. We have to try. That was all I could say. Struggle, fight, and turn things upside down. Yu Jonghyuk stared at me quietly before leaving the car. I could see it without asking. Maybe he was going to do his own preparations. This was Yu Jonghyuk. He didn't give up on his goal even if he gave up his life. Despite the mighty despair, he challenged it again and again, overcoming that despair. Thus, he lived and would live like that. Eventually, he would become unhappy. Once Yu Jonghyuk, only one sentence that I read from his heart was left with me. "I'm not like you." I brooded over this sentence as I turned on my smartphone. I knew what Yu Jonghyuk was talking about. 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, Second Revision, .txt. The death of the Breaking the Sky Sword Saint would be recorded. The success of this round would be written down. Maybe the changed ending would be written. The fourth wall is shaking faintly. My trembling fingers touched the screen several times. Yu Jonghyuk's words once again emerged. "I'm not like you." I didn't know what that bastard knew about me. I had watched Yu Jonghyuk for over 10 years, while Yu Jonghyuk hadn't even known me for a year. That jerk, what did he know about me? I turned off the screen. It didn't matter what was written. In any case, the story I wanted to create wouldn't be in it. Jang Haeung. I want to save Murim. Jang Haeung wiped his eyes while raising his head. I stared at him and slowly opened my mouth. I didn't know if this would work or not. Still, it was better than doing nothing. There were various beings in the detention center of the executive branch. It was mainly filled with imprisoned constellations and transcendents caught by the probability conformity assessment. However, it was rare for a member of the executive branch to come directly, even if probability was violated. Those who used too much probability would be hit by a storm, and it was easy to avoid attention. Even so, the executive branch had to step in for this man's situation. The Dakibi Yunki sighed as he gazed at the map trapped in the probability net. "Look here." Then the little person looked at Yunki. Yunki gazed at the handsome face and said, "You should now return to your original scenario area. Isn't your home in danger? Thanks to you, your planetary system is unable to proceed with the scenario." The small man laughed. "Once I leave, you will send the disaster to Peaceland again. Didn't I already say that won't happen? I don't believe in your words." Yunki flinched and stepped back at the growling voice. This was why transcendents were tricky. The constellations could quickly understand once spoken to, but the transcendents were stubborn mortal and sometimes made absurd messes like this. The man continued to speak. "There is someone I'm waiting for. I'll stay here until he returns to my home." "Waiting for? Who is it?" "I'll leave on my own once he comes." Yunki was about to open his mouth again when the prison door opened and a new prisoner appeared. "Grr, fucking Dakibis." The prison shook from the fierce true voice. Yunki and the small man turned towards the voice at the same time. At the entrance, a constellation who had been bounded by the executive branch Dakibis was walking in. It was a constellation with the appearance of a lizard. "That bastard scammed me. He was the one who stole my coins. Why did you grab me instead of him? If you can't find a way to repay your debt, we will be forced to take away a story." Yunki had a rough idea of the situation. Sometimes these things happened. The constellation came here because he couldn't repay the ridiculous loan interest. Yunki was clicking his tongue while the constellation continued yelling. The Dakibis were familiar with such turmoil, but one person wasn't. "Shut up." The brash swamp predator turned at the cold voice. "Who are you?" "Little man." At this moment, a tremendous airflow swirled around the little man. His body seemed to rise in the air, and blue lightning wrapped around his body. "What, kook?" The brash swamp predator let out a confused sound. The power of a mortal pressed down on his status. It was something he had never experienced before. The net of the prison let out a pained scream. A strength beyond the probability assigned to this place was rising from the small man. The shocked Yunki and the other Dakibis increased the output of the net, but the situation didn't change. The man's body became smaller and he popped through the net. The huge storm shot towards the brash swamp predator. The whole building shook and dust rose. The brash swamp predator lay on the floor. 5 Dakibis had bravely rushed forward and barely managed to deflect the trajectory of the blue-white fist. The terrible traces left by the fist remained on the wall. Rather than blaming the master of the fist, the Dakibis quickly delivered a report. "Congratulations, brash swamp predator. You are free." "Huh? What?" "I just received an order to release you. Someone has paid your debt." "What? Who?" The brash swamp predator forget what just happened at the news. The moment the Dakibi mentioned a name, Kirio's body stopped while the brash swamp predator wondered. "That guy paid my debt?" At this moment, the blue-white lightning of electrification shot towards the Dakibi. Kirios picked up the Dakibi by the collar and asked, "What did you say just now?" "And no, what?" "The name you just said." "Where is he now?" Before the Dakibi could answer, a message flew into Kirios' ears. Kirios stared blankly at the air for a moment before walking past the Dakibis towards the entrance. Yunki urgently exclaimed. "Wait a minute. I can't let you go. If you go back to your home planet, I won't go home. The paradox Baekjung, Kyrios Rodgrain, spoke with a smile filled with anger. I will go to my disciple.